this is I Do Damage, and welcome back to the channel. In this last Epoch video, I want to talk about patch 0.7.5, which came out Wednesday, December 18th. In this video, I want to do a breakdown overview of the patch, my impressions, as well as the state of the game and where I think the game is headed in the future. It's looking good, guys. Before we start, I want to say thank you. Thank you to all of you that have hit that subscribe button and helped me break that 250 mark. That's awesome, and it's such a big achievement for me, really, and I want to say thank you. Also, I do stream on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. Hopefully I'll catch you there sometime. And don't forget, I am a Green Man Gaming official ambassador, as well as a Humble Bundle partner. And if you use my affiliate links down below and purchase a game there, it'll help support the channel. Let's go ahead and start this thing up, shall we? The biggest highlight of this new patch is Act 7. Act 7, let me tell you, it's, in my opinion, way better than Act 6. And it adds a lot more mobs, a lot more maps, and a lot more bosses. And wow, they've really, I know I said this last patch, but they've beefed up the story even more this time around. It took me, I think, about 6 hours to complete the story. Granted, I was kind of messing around with my build a little bit, so I kind of hit some parts where I had to go back and grind a little bit. And that's totally fine, but that brings me to the next point. And I don't usually like to comment on the difficulty of games in general because it's so different for every different player. But I do feel, and I've talked to other players as well, that it feels like the game is more of a challenge now, which is awesome. Before it was you could just roll through the story in 3 hours and be done. But now the mobs have more HP. I think they hit harder even. The mobs feel more rewarding to fight. The 2 times I died during the stream when the patch first came out were totally fair deaths. And when I say 2 deaths, I mean the one-shot deaths. I died definitely more than twice. But there was 2 one-shots. And before the one-shots were kind of like, what? You know, what happened? But this time around, I knew my mistake. I knew I stood in that AoE and I should have moved, or I got hit by that spear and I saw the animation and I could have moved out of it. And that really leads to rewarding gameplay and overall more fun, to be honest. I love the difficulty, and it feels like they're really in tune with how they're handling the difficulty. And that's one of the things I'm most excited for with Last Epoch, among other things, obviously. Like I said, it definitely added more playtime with all the side quests, the new act, the difficulty changes, the time rifts. There's a lot more to the story now, and I think a new player could probably get 8 or more hours out of just the story alone on your first playthrough. Patch 0.7.5 brought 3 new skill trees to the table and 2 brand new skills. If you watched my patch preview, you already knew this, but I decided to include it in this video anyway, just for you. First of all, they added Earthquake for the Shaman, which was the skill I was most interested in. And on the stream, I was just pushing to get that new skill. I just wanted to see how it worked, how it looked, and I was a bit underwhelmed. I felt like the mana cost was a bit too high on the skill for the little amount of damage it does. And maybe that's just dependent on my gear, and maybe I just have to gear specifically for that skill. Either way, I used it maybe 5 times and then just took it off my bar and forgot about it because the build I was going for just didn't really cater to. But I do think it has potential for more of a burst type build. Another skill they added was Flame Ward for the mage, and this is meant to be more of a oh crap button skill to save your life. It gives you a burst of ward. I haven't got to mess around with it yet. I do plan to in the future once we get the bugs cleared up. And the third skill tree was, I think it was a paladin skill. I'm not going to go super in depth into it. It was an already existing skill that got a skill tree. But speaking of the bugs I mentioned, there's one bug right now that really bothers me, and it's your runes. They now go into your inventory directly, into your crafting materials, but they're not there and you can't actually use them. At the time of recording this video, they did release a hotfix, but this specific bug is still being worked on, and they think they know the fix, so I anticipate by the time this video is live that this will be all cleared up and I'll be back to grinding in my happy place and farming out all those runes. Another huge system they added to this, and I've been waiting for about 2 or 3 patches, and it's finally here, and that is gambling. You now have something to use all that excess gold on. You can go and just gamble it all away. The way it works is you go to the gambling vendor, you spend gold on an item, and it tells you the base implicit stats on the specific item. So you know if it's a turquoise, you're going to have pet implicit stats on it already there, and it shows those. Those are not random, those are guaranteed. You pick out from a pool items and you buy it. We'll just stick to the turquoise ring or whatever. Say I buy the turquoise ring, it's gone. I can't just sit there and re-roll turquoise rings. I have to wait for that to refresh. But once you buy the item, it rolls the rarity. You can get anywhere from a white common item all the way up to a unique or a set item, and anywhere in between. It's super cool, and I gotta say, honestly, the voice acting for when you get a crappy item is hilarious. It's just like, oh, better luck next time. I don't know, I like the voice acting, and it kind of made me chuckle. Overall, I think it's a cool system. I like going back into town and just setting aside some time to just go through items and dump some gold. It feels nice. Now, I know I said at the very start that Act 7 was the highlight of this patch, and for me personally, the true highlight of this patch is the item system update. And the number one part of this patch is you can now click and drag items. It's so much more smooth now. You can actually click and drag. Oh my gosh, what a game changer. What a game. It's huge. It's huge to me. It's probably my number one part of the patch. Anyway, they did overhaul the item system, and it's more on the back end, but so for the players, it did actually change a lot. Like I said, the click and drag, obviously. The stash can now be searched, which is huge. With all those stash tabs, you can now finally search for specific items. We saw many UI improvements, such as items are red if you can't afford them, or there's a little red X on an item if you're too low level to equip the item. Just simple little things to give you more information quicker. Definitely a nice quality of life improvement there. Also, the runes and glyphs go straight to your crafting material tab now, which has also gotten moved, which made the UI look even more crisp. However, there's still that bug with the runes, but I already mentioned and told you about that. Hopefully we'll get it fixed. Probably will be by the time the video is live. That's going to be it for the item system change. By far my favorite part of the patch. On to some noteworthy changes. These are things that I'm not going to deep dive into this patch. The patch notes will be linked below if you want to know a specific skill that you've been using and if it's been buffed or nerfed or how it's been changed. We're not going to do a deep dive this time around. This video I wanted to focus more on the state of the game in the future. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and talk about these noteworthy changes. Just real quick, get it out of the way. They did a ton of skill and item balance changes. There's a lot. I went through the whole list and wow, they did a lot of balancing. Maybe that's where the difficulty is coming from. They also added new items. They added staves and offhand items, which is awesome for those mage builds. I gotta say, the staves are OP. They have physical damage as well as spell power, and some of them can roll pretty high. It's awesome. They added more uniques, as they do usually with about every patch. They added more sound effects. More sound effects. I just wonder if they had to use another melon. Never forget the melon, guys. You probably have no idea what I'm referencing, do you? Anyway, link will be down below if you want to try to remember the melon. Alright, back on path. They also did some minor visual improvements throughout some of the other acts. They also did some performance updates to hopefully help out with some of the stuttering that some people have been having. They said it still may happen, but hopefully it's a lot more rare now. So if you've had issues with performance in the past, maybe it's time to jump in and check out if it's been fixed for you. Also, there's been many bug fixes. There was a ton. We're still waiting more for the runes to be fixed, like I've mentioned now for a third time. That's going to be it for all the changes and all the big things in the patch. Now, this is what I really want to talk about, guys. And let me start with saying I have a lot of hope for Last Epoch. I have a lot of hope, but I know to be cautious. And that's what I want to talk about. What am I excited for? And what are my concerns with the game? So let's jump right into it. First of all, I really love the new feeling of the game and that difficulty. I don't know if it was intended to be more difficult or feel more difficult, but it did. And I noticed myself thinking about my movements more in this patch than I ever have before on Last Epoch. And I think it's a really great touch. They're doing something special. And if they really stay in tune with the difficulty and the feeling throughout the acts and avoid super difficulty spikes and just make it that smooth transition, they could have a real gem in terms of difficulty. I love it. With the difficulty in mind, that also made the story feel a lot more beefy this time around. It took me, like I said, I think 6.5 hours to actually complete the story. I did spend a little bit of time messing around with my build and respecking skills here and there to kind of tweak it. And that's a good thing. I mean, that just adds more to the playability of the game, right? That Act 7 added a ton. The new time rifts that we saw last patch adds even more. It's just such a good feeling. I'm really, to be honest, man, I'm just so excited because it seems like they're really focusing on the journey to the end game. It feels like that journey to the end game, because you got to think, we only have 7 acts right now. We still have 3 more whole acts to come. You know, we're talking like probably a 10-hour long campaign or story, journey to the end game. I just really hope that that journey to the end game is worth it, and that there's enough at the end game to make the journey feel like just the beginning. And I think it could be hard to pull off. As it is right now, we have timelines and then the arena. Just if you don't know, I'll just kind of tell you real quick. There's timelines, which are like rifts, basically. They're maps. And they have an objective. You can kill the mobs in there or just speed run to the end, complete the objective. Each timeline has modifiers, gets harder and more rewarding as the further you go. And if you die in one of these timelines, you get kicked out. So they are roguelike in that sense. You don't lose any items or XP or anything for dying, but you're just kicked out and have to restart the timeline over. And throughout these timelines, if you complete them, you go to a treasure room, and within that treasure room, you can find an arena key, which the arena key is currently what you use to place on the leaderboard. You go and do the arena, which is just endless waves. That's all it is. It's endless waves, increasing difficulty. And I don't know, I feel like the end game's okay. Right now, it's nothing to write home about. I really want to see more expansion on it. I know they've talked about Epoch's Call, Eternity Catches, the time rifts, which are now in. And those 3 might be enough, but I hope there's more. I hope there's more to the end game. As far as what I want there to be, you know, I don't know. I just hope that the end game pays off in going through that long journey of story to get there. So now that you know, end game is one thing that's always on my mind. My other concern with Last Epoch is multiplayer. I want to know, how are they going to implement multiplayer? How is trading going to work? How's it going to work with the story? What's it going to look like in the end game? Because let's be real, if I can co-op, let's say I can do the story with 4 players, right? Okay, so what about our story progress? Is it all individual? Is it synced? I just want to know how it looks. And then when we get to the end game, there's just so many unknowns with multiplayer, I guess, right now. They've talked about an auction house, which, please no auction house. They talked about doing trading with the longer you've been friends with someone on your friends list, the more you can trade with them. You know, none of these are written in stone anywhere, and we don't know much about them. I hope over the next year we'll get more clarity on this, as multiplayer and endgame are my 2 big concerns with Last Epoch. But with that in mind, I gotta say, Last Epoch does a lot of interesting things with its crafting and skill system. These are the bread and butter, I think, for Last Epoch right now. I think for $35 for the game right now, I think you if you're like me and you like to theory craft and nerd out on builds and craft and think about your skill setup and gear and itemization and all that good stuff, I think for $35 you could get it definitely your money's worth. But if you're skeptical and you feel like $35 is a bit much, it will be $15 at release here in a year. So if you want to wait a year and save $20, meh, that's your choice. I gotta say, I'm excited for Last Epoch, if you can't tell. It's a great solo player experience right now, and I just hope that they can tailor it into the nice multiplayer feeling that I'm hopeful for. And I hope they can deliver on that end game aspect. To be honest, I think they can pull it off. That's going to be it for this video, guys. I hope this helped. Hopefully you learned about the patch and the state of the game, the future, if it's something you want to invest into. If you enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe for more videos every Monday and Friday, and sometimes some bonus videos during the week. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.